The laughter erupted through the war room like thunder breaking over a battlefield, sharp and merciless, bouncing off the reinforced walls of the Pentagon's most secure conference chamber. Captain Briggs Calloway stood at 6 feet 2 inches of sculpted military precision, his camouflage uniform pressed to perfection, not a single thread out of place, his shoulders squared like he was posing for a recruitment poster. His finger, thick as a gun barrel, pointed directly at the small figure standing awkwardly beside the tactical planning table. "Who let this coffee girl in here?" Briggs's voice dripped with the kind of contempt usually reserved for enemy combatants, his perfectly chiseled jaw twisting into a sneer that would have made lesser soldiers crumble. "Hey, sweetheart, the dishwashing station is downstairs, not here in the grown-ups room." Madison Graves stood motionless, her long neon blue hair falling like a waterfall over her face, obscuring her features in shadow. The oversized army green t-shirt hung on her frame like a tent, the fabric worn thin from countless washes, holes near the hem suggesting it had been salvaged from a donation bin. Her dark military pants were ripped at both knees, the tears revealing pale skin beneath, and her brown combat boots looked like they'd marched through 3 wars and lost all of them. She appeared fragile, almost breakable, a sparrow among eagles in this room, full of broad-shouldered men in pristine uniforms. I have orders to report here." Madison's voice came out as barely more than a whisper, trembling like autumn leaves in a storm, her hands clasping and unclasping at her sides in what appeared to be nervous habit. "Orders?" Major Thorne Beckett, 240 pounds of pure muscle wrapped in authority, his thick beard groomed to military regulation but still managing to look wild, let out a bark of laughter that shook his whole frame. "Orders to clean up the conference room, maybe? Or orders to brew coffee for the real officers who actually belong here?" The room exploded with laughter from the 12 senior officers gathered around the massive oak table. On the wall-mounted screens, maps of the Middle East blinked with red markers indicating hot zones, classified intelligence reports scattered across the table's surface like fallen leaves of national secrets. The air conditioning hummed quietly, the only constant in a room suddenly filled with cruel mirth. Briggs took 3 measured steps forward, each bootfall deliberate and heavy, positioning himself so close to Madison that she had to crane her neck back to look at his face. The height difference was almost comical, David and Goliath in reverse, except this David showed no sign of divine confidence. "You know what I think?" His breath smelled of black coffee and arrogance. "I think you're lost, little girl." "Security!" He whirled toward Sergeant Hawkins standing at attention by the reinforced door. "How did this civilian breach our perimeter? This is a classified briefing on Operation Sand Viper, not a tour for lost tourists." Madison took a small step backward, her shoulder blade connecting with the cold concrete wall behind her. But in her blue eyes, so brief it might have been imagination, something flickered, a flash of Arctic cold that disappeared before anyone could register its presence. In exactly 15 minutes, this room would witness one of the most shocking reversals in Pentagon history. But for now, she was just a mouse cornered by lions. The tactical planning table between them displayed holographic projections of troop movements, supply lines, and strike zones, technology worth millions that Madison seemed to be studying with an intensity that didn't match her trembling hands. Briggs noticed her gaze and laughed again, the sound sharp as breaking glass. "Look at her pretending she can read tactical maps," he announced to the room, playing to his audience like a seasoned performer. "Next she'll be telling us she knows the difference between a brigade and a battalion." Madison's fingers found the edge of the table, steadying herself against its solid weight. The movement was subtle, but Lieutenant Harper, the sole female officer in the room, noticed how Madison's fingers automatically found the table's stability points, the places where the structure was strongest. It was an odd detail, the kind of thing someone would only know if they'd spent considerable time around military equipment. "Sir," Sergeant Hawkins's voice cut through the laughter, uncertain and careful. "Her eye checks out. She's listed in the system as—" "I don't care if she's listed as the Queen of England," Briggs interrupted, his voice rising to fill the room. "This is my briefing room, and I decide who belongs here." He turned back to Madison, his gray eyes narrowing to slits. "And you, sweetheart, definitely don't belong. If watching someone get publicly humiliated for no reason makes your blood boil, hit that subscribe button right now. This story is about to reveal why judging someone by their appearance might be the biggest mistake of your life. And trust me, what happens when that torn shirt reveals her secret will leave you speechless." Share this with anyone who's ever been underestimated. The tension in the room shifted palpably as Briggs grabbed the back of an empty chair, dragging it across the floor with a screech that made several officers wince. He positioned it in the center of the room, a stage for whatever performance he had planned. "Tell you what," he said, his voice taking on a false sweetness that fooled no one. "Since you have orders to be here, why don't you make yourself useful? Sit down and we'll find something appropriate for your skill level." Madison moved toward the chair with measured steps, each movement deliberate despite her apparent nervousness. As she sat, her posture remained perfectly straight, spine aligned in a way that would have made any drill instructor proud. But Briggs was too busy enjoying his moment to notice such details. Major Thorne Beckett picked up a thick folder from the table, 400 pages of classified intelligence reports bound in red tape. With a casual flick of his wrist, he tossed it toward Madison. The folder should have hit her, papers exploding everywhere in a humiliating scatter, but her hand shot up with startling precision, catching it cleanly without even looking. The room went quiet for a heartbeat. "Lucky catch," Thorne muttered, but his eyes had narrowed slightly, reassessing. Briggs, determined not to lose momentum, clapped his hands together with mock enthusiasm. "Since you're so good with your hands, how about you make us all some coffee? The machine's over there." He pointed to the corner where a military-grade coffee maker sat, the kind that could brew strong enough to wake the dead. 12 cups, black. Think you can handle that without breaking anything?" Madison stood slowly, the folder still in her hand. As she placed it on the table, her fingers automatically aligned it with the other documents, squared to perfect militarist precision. She moved toward the coffee maker, but as she passed the tactical display, her eyes lingered on the troop positions for exactly 3 seconds. "That's wrong," she said quietly, almost to herself. The room froze. Briggs's face flushed red, the color climbing from his collar to his hairline. "Excuse me?" Madison's finger hovered over the holographic display, not quite touching, but indicating a specific position. "Your supply convoy route through Sector 7. It's exposed to crossfire from these ridge lines." Her voice had changed, just slightly, losing some of its tremor. Any insurgent with basic tactical knowledge would position here and here. She indicated 2 positions. "You'd lose the entire convoy in under 4 minutes. The silence that followed was deafening. Several officers leaned forward, studying the positions she'd indicated. Major Sterling, the operations specialist, pulled up his tablet, running quick calculations. His face paled slightly. She's right," he said slowly. "How did we miss that?" Briggs's hand slammed down on the table, making several officers jump. "Enough of this circus act." His voice had lost its mocking tone, replaced by something harder, more dangerous. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it's not a game." Madison's interruption was soft but clear. "Lives depend on these decisions. Real people who won't come home if you make that mistake." The way she said it, with a weight of experience that didn't match her appearance, made Lieutenant Harper lean forward. There was something in Madison's voice, a ghost of old pain that spoke of personal loss. "Who are you?" Harper asked, her voice cutting through the masculine posturing. Madison turned those blue eyes toward her, and Harper saw something she recognized. The 1,000-yard stare of someone who'd seen too much. "Someone who doesn't matter," Madison replied, "but the intel should." Briggs stepped between them, his bulk blocking Harper's view. "You know what? I've had enough of this." He grabbed Madison's shoulder, his grip tight enough to bruise. "You're going to tell us exactly who sent you here and why, or I'm calling security to—" His words cut off as Madison's body moved with fluid precision. Without seeming to exert any effort, she shifted her weight, redirected his grip, and stepped aside so smoothly that Briggs found himself grabbing air. It wasn't aggressive, wasn't an attack. It was simply perfect defensive movement, the kind drilled into Special Forces operators through thousands of hours of practice. The room's atmosphere changed instantly. 12 trained military officers recognized that movement for what it was, even if they couldn't quite believe it. Thorne Beckett stood slowly, his hand unconsciously moving toward where his sidearm would normally rest. "That was Krav Maga," he said, his voice low and careful. "Military Krav Maga, not the civilian version." Madison had returned to her submissive posture, shoulders hunched, making herself small again. But the illusion had cracked. Everyone had seen it, that flash of lethal capability hiding beneath the shabby clothes and trembling voice. Briggs's face had gone from red to purple, his pride wounded more than his body. "Grab her," he barked at two junior officers near the door. "Lieutenant Patterson, Corporal Walsh, restrain her until we figure out what's going on." The two men moved forward reluctantly, clearly uncomfortable with the order, but trained to obey. Madison didn't resist as they took her arms, didn't struggle or protest. She simply stood there, blue eyes fixed on Briggs with an intensity that made him unconsciously step back. Admiral Whitmore chose that moment to enter the war room, his presence immediately commanding attention. At 63, he moved with the careful precision of a man who had spent his entire life in service, his uniform bearing more decorations than anyone else in the room. His sharp eyes took in the scene. Madison restrained between two officers, Briggs's aggressive posture, the tension thick enough to cut. "Captain Calloway," his voice was deceptively mild, the calm before a storm. "Would you care to explain why you're manhandling a civilian in my conference room?" "Sir, this woman infiltrated our classified briefing. She's been making claims about our tactical plans, demonstrating knowledge she shouldn't possess." Briggs straightened, trying to regain his authority. "I believe she's a security threat." Whitmore's gaze moved to Madison, and something flickered across his weathered face. Not quite recognition, but something close. He studied her for a long moment, taking in every detail from her unkempt appearance to the way she held herself despite being restrained. "Release her," he ordered quietly. "But, sir—" Briggs started to protest. "That wasn't a request, Captain." The Admiral's tone could have frozen water. "Release her immediately." Patterson and Walsh let go of Madison's arms, stepping back with visible relief. She rubbed her wrists briefly, the gesture revealing a glimpse of scarred skin that disappeared as her sleeves fell back into place. "Your name?" Whitmore asked her directly. "Madison Graves, sir." Her voice had returned to its quiet tremor, but Whitmore caught something else in it, a note that didn't quite fit. "And your purpose here?" "I have orders to observe and report, sir." She reached slowly into her pocket, every movement telegraphed to show she wasn't a threat, and produced a folded paper. "My authorization." Whitmore took the paper, unfolded it with deliberate care. His eyes scanned the contents once, twice, 3 times. The color drained from his face so gradually that only those watching closely would notice. He refolded the paper with hands that had developed the slightest tremor. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying a weight that made everyone in the room straighten unconsciously, "we're going to continue this briefing. Ms. Graves will be observing." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. "Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me privately. After the briefing." Briggs's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Sir, with all due respect, we can't just—" "Captain Calloway," Whitmore's voice cut through his protest like a blade. "You've already demonstrated questionable judgment today. Don't compound it." The rebuke hung in the air like a physical presence. Briggs's face cycled through several shades of red before settling on a mottled purple. His hands clenched and unclenched at his sides, the tendons in his neck standing out like cables under tension. Madison moved to a corner of the room, positioning herself where she could see everyone but remained unobtrusive. As she settled against the wall, her posture shifted subtly, weight distributed evenly, knees slightly bent, ready to move in any direction. It was the stance of someone who'd learned never to be caught off guard. The briefing resumed with palpable tension. Officers presented their reports, discussed logistics, analyzed intelligence, but everyone kept stealing glances at the small woman in the corner. She never moved, never spoke, but her eyes tracked everything, processing information with an intensity that made several officers stumble over their presentations. 20 minutes into the resumed briefing, Briggs couldn't contain himself any longer. His wounded pride demanded retribution, and he had been stewing in his humiliation since Whitmore's rebuke. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I need verification of her credentials," he announced, pulling out his secure phone. "This is a matter of national security. We can't just accept some random paperwork." "Captain," Whitmore started, warning in his tone. But Briggs was already dialing, his fingers stabbing at the screen with unnecessary force. "I'm calling Strategic Command. If she's legitimate, they'll have records." He put the phone on speaker, a power play to make his point publicly. The line connected after 2 rings. "Strategic Command, Security Verification, Lieutenant Colonel Morrison speaking." "Colonel Morrison, this is Captain Briggs Calloway. Authorization code Tango 779er Alpha. I need immediate verification of an individual claiming authorization to observe classified briefings. Go ahead with the details, Captain." Briggs's eyes locked onto Madison with predatory satisfaction. Individual identifies as Madison Graves. Female, approximately 5'4", blue hair, claiming observation authority for Operation Sandviper briefing. There was a pause on the line, then the sound of rapid typing. The silence stretched for 10 seconds, 20, 30. When Morrison spoke again, his voice had changed completely. Captain Calloway, switch to secure line immediately. Do not discuss this individual on open channels. The color drained from Briggs's face. Sir, That's an order, Captain. Secure line now. And Captain, whatever you're thinking of doing regarding that individual, don't. The line went dead. Every eye in the room turned to Madison, who remained perfectly still against the wall, her expression unreadable. Briggs's phone slipped from nerveless fingers, clattering on the table. Briggs's tactical watch buzzed with an encrypted message, its military-grade GPS and biometric sensors tracking every movement in the room. These advanced combat smartwatches, designed for special operations, could monitor heart rates during firefights, send coded communications through satellite networks, and even detect chemical weapons in the air. The same technology that Navy SEALs relied on for mission-critical data in hostile territories, now standard issue for Pentagon security protocols. The message on his screen made his blood run cold. Cease all hostile action immediately. Authorization level Omega. Major Thorne Beckett, never one to let confusion show, tried to salvage the situation. Perhaps we should continue the briefing. We're wasting valuable time on what, Major? Madison's voice cut through his words, still quiet but carrying clearly across the room. On wondering why someone who looks like me knows more about your tactical failures than you do. The challenge in her words was unmistakable. Thorne's face flushed dark red, his massive frame tensing like a coiled spring. Listen here, the Kandahar operation. August 15, 2018. Madison's words stopped him cold. 15 casualties because someone ignored terrain analysis. The convoy route through Sector 7 mirrors that exact same mistake. Same exposure angles, same vulnerability to RPG fire from elevated positions. She pushed off from the wall, taking 3 steps forward. Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Isn't that right, Major Beckett? The specificity of her knowledge, the date, the operation. Several officers exchanged uncomfortable glances. The Kandahar incident had been classified. The details buried in reports that never made it past this level of command. How could you possibly know about that? Lieutenant Harper asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Madison's gaze swept the room, lingering on each face for exactly 2 seconds. The same way I know that Captain Sawyer there has been favoring his left shoulder since a training accident 3 months ago. The same way I know Lieutenant Monroe keeps checking his phone because his wife is 8 months pregnant and due any day. The same way I know that Sergeant Hawkins recognized my name the moment he saw my eye but chose to stay silent. Every accusation landed like a precision strike. Sawyer's hand unconsciously moved to his shoulder. Monroe's phone was indeed partially visible in his pocket, the screen showing multiple text notifications. And Hawkins. Hawkins had gone pale as death, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. Observation, Madison continued, her voice gaining strength with each word. It's what I do, what I've always done, what I was trained to do by people who made your instructors look like playground monitors. Briggs had recovered enough of his composure to attempt another attack, his pride demanding he regain control of the situation. Trained by who? You're what, 25, 26? You expect us to believe? I expect you to believe evidence, Madison interrupted, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. Like the fact that your supposedly secure communication system has been compromised for the last 3 months. The room erupted in protests, denials, angry voices overlapping in chaos. Admiral Whitmore raised one hand, and silence fell instantly. Explain, he commanded. Madison walked to the tactical display, her movements now showing none of the earlier hesitation. Every Thursday at 1400 hours, someone accesses the classified server from Terminal 7 in the communications room. They download operational plans, troop movements, supply schedules, small amounts, nothing that would trigger automatic security protocols, but over 3 months, she turned to face them. They've acquired enough intelligence to compromise every operation you're planning for the next 6 months. Major Sterling was already pulling up security logs on his tablet, his fingers flying across the screen. His face went white. She's right. Thursday, 2 p.m., Terminal 7. How did we miss this? Because you weren't looking for it, Madison replied. You were too busy looking at external threats to notice the enemy within. The tension is exploding. If you're feeling that satisfaction building as the truth starts to surface, smash that like button. Comment below. Have you ever been in a situation where people completely misjudged your abilities? The revelation coming will vindicate every underdog watching. The implications of her words sank in slowly, like water through sand. Someone in this room, someone with the highest security clearance, was a traitor. Eyes began darting suspiciously from face to face, trust evaporating like morning dew under a harsh sun. Briggs, desperate to deflect suspicion, went on the offensive. This is ridiculous. She could be making this up, feeding us false information to create chaos. For all we know, she's the security breach. Madison's laugh was short and bitter. Yes, Captain. I infiltrated your secure facility, sat through your boring briefing, and allowed myself to be manhandled and humiliated, all as part of my master plan to, what? Point out your tactical errors and security failures? That's some next-level reverse psychology. Several officers had to suppress smiles at her sarcasm. Even Lieutenant Harper's lips twitched slightly, but Briggs wasn't done. His pride had taken too many hits, and he needed to establish dominance somehow. If you're so observant, so well-trained, he said, moving closer to her with each word, then prove it. Show us these supposed skills that make you superior to trained military officers. Madison tilted her head slightly, considering. You want a demonstration? I want proof you're not just some wannabe with a good memory for dates and a talent for cold reading. She nodded slowly. All right. Major Beckett, would you please stand up? Thorne rose from his chair, his massive frame unfolding like a mountain, forming from tectonic pressure. At 6'4" and 240 pounds of solid muscle, he towered over Madison's slight figure. You were Force Recon, she said, circling him slowly. Marine Corps, deployed to Iraq in 2005, 2008, and 2011. You have a metal plate in your left leg from an IED in Fallujah, which is why you shift your weight to the right when you stand for more than 10 minutes. You're right-handed, but train ambidextrous because a shoulder injury in 2013 limited your range of motion. You carry a Glock 19 in an ankle holster, even though you're not supposed to be armed in this building. And you've been divorced twice, both times, because of deployment schedules. Thorne's face had gone from red to white to red again. Every single detail was accurate. Information that wasn't in any file, couldn't be found in any database. How, was all he managed. Your stance tells me about the Force Recon training. The way you move speaks to the leg injury. The shoulder rotation when you reached for your coffee earlier showed compensation for old damage. The outline of the ankle holster is visible when you cross your legs. And the tan lines on your ring finger, one old, one more recent, tell the marriage story. She turned to face the room. Would you like me to continue with everyone else? Or should we discuss the real reason I'm here? Admiral Whitmore stepped forward, his decision made. Everyone out except Captain Calloway, Major Beckett, and Lieutenant Harper. Sir, several voices protested. That's an order. Clear the room. Now. The officers filed out reluctantly, casting curious and suspicious glances back at Madison. When the door sealed behind the last of them, the war room felt suddenly vast and empty. The tactical displays continued their silent rotation, casting shifting shadows on the walls. Whitmore turned to Madison. The authorization you showed me, it's genuine, isn't it? You're not just some analyst or intelligence officer. Madison reached up slowly, deliberately, and pulled her hair back into a tight ponytail, revealing her face fully for the first time. The transformation was subtle but significant. Her jawline was sharper than it had appeared, her cheekbones more pronounced, and there was a small scar running through her left eyebrow that had been hidden by her hair. I'm exactly what the authorization says I am, she replied. Someone with the authority to investigate security breaches at the highest levels. Briggs, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly laughed. It wasn't his earlier mocking laugh, but something harder, more desperate. This is insane. You're what? NSA? CIA? FBI? Which alphabet agency sent a girl to spy on us? Madison's eyes fixed on him with laser intensity. The kind that doesn't have letters, Captain. The kind that doesn't officially exist. The kind that handles problems that can't be solved through normal channels. She walked to the main display, pulling up files with practiced ease, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface like she'd designed it herself. Images began appearing: satellite photos, communication intercepts, financial records. 3 months ago, intelligence started leaking from this facility. Not just any intelligence, specifically SEAL Team operational plans. 7 missions had to be aborted. 3 resulted in ambushes. Good people died because someone in this room has been selling information to hostile forces. The classified documents on the table represented billions in defense contracts, each requiring specialized military insurance coverage that protected against espionage, cyber attacks, and operational failures. These comprehensive insurance policies, specifically designed for defense contractors and military operations, covered everything from stolen intelligence to compromised missions, with premiums reaching millions annually. Financial institutions specializing in military bonds understood that one leaked document could trigger claims worth hundreds of millions. Lieutenant Harper studied the evidence appearing on screen, her analytical mind processing the connections. "You're not really Madison Graves, are you?" "Madison Graves doesn't exist," came the reply. "She's a legend, a cover identity created specifically for this operation." "Then who are you really?" Thorne demanded, his hand inching toward his concealed weapon. Madison's smile was thin and sharp as a blade. "I'm the person sent to find your traitor, and I have." The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Briggs, Thorne, and Harper all tensed, each suddenly aware that one of them was about to be exposed. Before the shocking tattoo reveal that changes everything, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. You won't want to miss what happens when they realize who she really is. Drop your location in the comments. Where are you watching from? "You see," Madison continued, pulling up more files, "the traitor made one crucial mistake. They accessed the files using their biometric login, thinking the system wouldn't log it if they used Terminal 7's Ghost protocol. But every access leaves a trace in the quantum encryption matrix. Microscopic, nearly undetectable, but there if you know where to look." She turned from the display, her gaze moving between the 3 officers. The pattern was clever. Thursday afternoons, when most senior staff are in meetings. Small downloads, spread across multiple sessions. Patient, careful, professional, someone with years of experience in intelligence operations. Thorne's hand had found his weapon, though he hadn't drawn it. "If you know who it is, why the theater? Why not just arrest them?" "Because I needed confirmation. I needed to see reactions, gauge responses, watch for tells, and someone just gave themselves away." The room seemed to hold its breath. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause, waiting for the revelation that would shatter careers and lives. Madison walked slowly toward Briggs, who had backed against the table, his knuckles white as he gripped its edge. "Captain Calloway, you've been stationed here for 5 years. Perfect service record, multiple commendations, fast-tracked for promotion, the ideal officer. I've served my country with honor," he said through clenched teeth. "You have," Madison agreed, "which is why it must have been so hard when they approached you. When they found your weakness and exploited it." She pulled up another file, medical records. "Your daughter, Emma, 7 years old, diagnosed with a rare neurological condition 2 years ago. Treatment costs running close to $2 million, most of it not covered by military insurance. A desperate father would do almost anything to save his child." Briggs's facade cracked, real anguish flooding his features. "You don't understand?" "I understand perfectly." Madison's voice had softened slightly. "They offered you money for information. Nothing that would directly harm American soldiers, they promised. Just operational schedules, deployment rotations, harmless intelligence that would keep their people out of our way. And you believed them," Harper gasped, stepping back from Briggs as if he'd become radioactive. Thorne's weapon was half drawn, his face a mask of betrayed fury. But Madison raised her hand. "Except that's not what happened, is it, Captain?" Briggs's head snapped up, confusion replacing anguish. "What? You never took their money. You reported the approach to counterintelligence. You've been feeding them false information for the last 3 months under CIA supervision. You're not the traitor, you're bait." The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Harper's hand flew to her mouth. Thorne's weapon slipped back into its holster, but Madison wasn't done. The real traitor knew about the operation. They knew Captain Calloway was compromised, but being used as a double agent. They've been using his access as cover for their own activities, knowing any investigation would focus on him. She turned slowly, deliberately, to face Major Thorne Beckett. "Isn't that right, Major?" Thorne's reaction was instantaneous and violent. The Glock cleared his ankle holster in a fluid motion, aimed directly at Madison's center mass. But she was already moving, her body flowing like water around the weapon's arc. Her hand struck his wrist with surgical precision, sending the weapon spinning across the room. In the same motion, she drove her knee into his solar plexus, folding his massive frame in half. Thorne crashed to his knees, gasping for air, his face purple with rage and oxygen deprivation. Madison stood over him, not even breathing hard. The transformation from victim to predator complete. "Major Thorne Beckett," she said formally, "you're under arrest for espionage, treason, and conspiracy to commit murder of United States military personnel." Harper had her phone out, calling security, her voice high and shaky as she reported the situation. Briggs stood frozen, his world turned inside out in the span of seconds. But Thorne wasn't finished. With a roar of rage, he launched himself from the floor, 240 pounds of muscle and fury aimed at Madison's smaller frame. She sidestepped smoothly, using his momentum against him, and he crashed into the tactical display table with enough force to crack the reinforced glass top. "You have no proof," he snarled, blood running from a cut on his forehead. "No evidence that will hold up." Madison smiled, and it was the smile of a predator who'd cornered its prey. "Terminal 7, every Thursday, 2 p.m. Your biometric signature is all over the quantum encryption logs. Plus, we have recordings of your contacts with Iranian intelligence, voice prints, financial transfers to your accounts in Cyprus, even video of you meeting with their handler in Dubai last month." Thorne's face went gray. "That's impossible. I was careful. You were sloppy. You got comfortable, greedy. 50,000 per intel package wasn't enough anymore, was it? You wanted a bigger payday, so you started selling SEAL team routes. You're responsible for the deaths of 7 operators in the last 3 months." The door burst open, military police flooding in with weapons drawn. But the drama wasn't over. As they moved to restrain Thorne, Madison suddenly staggered, her hand going to her ribs. When she pulled it away, blood covered her palm. "He had a blade," she said, her voice steady despite the spreading red stain on her shirt. "Ceramic, wouldn't show on scanners." Harper rushed forward, pulling off her jacket to press against the wound. "Medic! We need a medic now!" But Madison pushed her away gently. "It's not deep. I've had worse." She looked at Admiral Whitmore, who had remained eerily calm throughout the confrontation. "Sir, there's more. Thorne wasn't working alone. There's a network, people embedded throughout the command structure." Whitmore nodded slowly. "We know. We've known for some time. That's why you're really here, isn't it? You're not just investigating, you're hunting." Madison's laugh was short and bitter. "Hunting, sir? No, I'm exterminating." As the medics arrived, as Thorne was dragged away in restraints, screaming about lawyers and rights, as the war room descended into controlled chaos, Madison stood in the center of it all, blood seeping through her fingers, but standing tall. Harper approached cautiously. "Who are you really? CI Special Operations?" Madison looked at her with those Arctic blue eyes. "Lieutenant Harper, have you ever heard of Ghost Unit 7? Harper's face went white. That's a myth, an urban legend. They don't exist." "Exactly," Madison replied. "We don't exist. We've never existed. And after today, Madison Graves won't exist either." She moved toward the door, brushing off medical attention, leaving bloody handprints on the table. But as she reached for the handle, Briggs called out, "Wait! Your injury, you need treatment." Madison paused, then slowly turned back. "Captain, I've been shot 4 times, stabbed 6 times, and blown up twice. This," she gestured to the blood, "this is just Tuesday." She pulled open the door, revealing a corridor filled with military personnel, all staring in shock and awe. Word had already spread. Someone had taken down Major Thorne Beckett, exposed a spy network, and survived a knife attack, all in the span of an hour. But as Madison stepped into the hallway, something happened that stopped everyone cold. Her shirt, already torn from the struggle, caught on the doorframe and ripped further, exposing her left arm from shoulder to elbow. The tattoo was impossible to miss. A black panther, rendered in extraordinary detail, seemed to leap from her skin. Its eyes were golden, burning with an inner fire that appeared almost alive in the fluorescent lighting. Every muscle was defined, every whisker precise, but it was what was written beneath that made hardened soldiers step back in shock. Ghost Unit 7, in bold military stenciling, and below that, a designation that made Admiral Whitmore's breath catch. 047 Phantom. The hallway erupted in whispers, gasps, disbelief cascading through the crowd like dominoes falling. Phantom? She's Phantom? Impossible. Phantom died in Operation Blackwater. 47 confirmed missions, 0 failures. The only operative to complete Hell Week twice. Briggs stared at the tattoo, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. You're dead. The report said you died in Syria. We held a memorial service. Madison pulled the torn fabric back over the tattoo, but the damage was done. Her cover, maintained so carefully, had been blown by something as simple as a door frame and worn fabric. Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated, she said dryly. Convenient, but exaggerated. Admiral Whitmore stepped forward, his voice carrying the weight of authority and something else, awe. Lieutenant Commander Madison Graves, Ghost Unit 7, the only female Navy SEAL to complete Delta Force selection, the only operator, male or female, to successfully complete 47 solo infiltration missions without a single failure. He straightened to attention and, in a move that shocked everyone present, rendered a perfect military salute. It's an honor, Commander. The effect was instantaneous. Every military personnel in the hallway snapped to attention, saluting in perfect unison. The sight of 30 hardened soldiers saluting the small, blood-stained us in torn clothes was surreal, almost dreamlike. Madison returned the salute with crisp precision, then let her hand fall. The honor, Admiral, is mine, but my work here isn't done. She turned to Briggs, who looked like he'd been hit by a truck, his entire worldview shattered and rebuilt in moments. Captain, I owe you an apology, using you as cover for this operation, letting you take the suspicion and humiliation. It was necessary, but it wasn't right. Briggs swallowed hard. You knew from the beginning, everything, the confrontation, the hostility. You orchestrated all of it. I needed Thorne to believe he was safe. That suspicion was focused elsewhere. Your genuine anger and humiliation sold it perfectly. I'm sorry for that. Don't be, Briggs replied, his voice rough. You caught a traitor who was killing our people. I'll take a little humiliation for that any day. Madison nodded, then turned to Harper. Lieutenant, you showed compassion when everyone else showed cruelty. That's a rare quality in this business. Don't lose it. Harper's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Ma'am, could I ask you something? Madison waited. The stories about Operation Blackwater, about what you did in that village, are they true? Madison's expression darkened, shadows of memory crossing her features. Which stories? That you held off 200 insurgents for 17 hours, alone, with 3 bullets and a broken rifle. I had 4 bullets, Madison corrected quietly. And the rifle wasn't broken, just jammed. The rest... She paused, looking through Harper to something only she could see. The rest is classified. Sergeant Hawkins, who had remained silent throughout everything, finally spoke up. I knew who you were the moment I saw your ID. My brother was in Team 6. You saved his life in Afghanistan. Madison studied him. Williams? Tall guy, terrible poker player? That's him. Hawkins's voice cracked slightly. He said you appeared out of nowhere, took out 12 Taliban fighters who had them pinned down, then disappeared like smoke. He never even got to thank you. No thanks necessary, it's what we do. The moment was interrupted by alarms suddenly blaring throughout the facility. Red lights bathed the corridor in hellish illumination as automated voices announced a security lockdown. Admiral Whitmore's secure phone rang. He answered, his face growing progressively grimmer as he listened. When he hung up, his expression was stone. We have a problem. Thorne triggered a dead man's switch. He's uploaded classified SEAL team locations to an open server. Every terrorist organization in the world now knows where our people are deployed. The blood seemed to drain from Madison's face. How many teams? All of them. Every active SEAL team globally. They have maybe 30 minutes before hostile forces can mobilize. Madison was already moving, pushing through the crowd toward the communications center. I need access to secure comms now, and get me a direct line to JSOC. As she ran, her torn shirt flapping, the tattoo visible with each stride, someone called out, "What can one person do?" She paused just long enough to look back. You're about to find out why they call me Phantom. The next 20 minutes would become legend in military circles. Madison, working from the communications center, with blood still seeping from her wound, coordinated the emergency extraction and relocation of 17 SEAL teams across 6 countries. Her knowledge of terrain, local assets, and extraction protocols was encyclopedic. She spoke in rapid-fire bursts, switching between English, Arabic, Pashto, and Mandarin as needed, coordinating with local assets, calling in favors from people who owed her their lives. Team 3, abort primary extraction point. Hostiles inbound from the north. Secondary extract at grid reference Alpha 77. Boat crew standing by. Team 7, you have a 10-minute window. Local asset call sign Nightingale will provide cover. Trust her, she's one of mine. Team 11, go dark immediately. Do not use standard protocols. Execute contingency Omega. Briggs, Harper, and even Admiral Whitmore watched in awe as she managed what should have been impossible, a simultaneous worldwide evacuation of America's most elite fighting forces, all while bleeding from a knife wound and running on what appeared to be pure determination. Justice is being served. If this story gave you chills, check out our next video about a female pilot they mocked at flight school. Click the video popping up on your screen right now. The ending will blow your mind. At the 23-minute mark, she set down the headset and turned to Whitmore. All teams accounted for and secure. 0 casualties. Then, as if someone had cut her strings, she collapsed. Briggs caught her before she hit the floor, his arms easily supporting her slight weight. "Medic! Get a medic here now!" But Madison's eyes were still open, still alert. "I'm fine," she muttered. "Just tired. It's been a long 3 months." As the medics finally got to treat her properly, she looked up at Briggs. "You asked earlier who I really am. I'm someone who made a promise. To every SEAL, to every operator who goes into harm's way, I promised that someone would always be watching their six, even if they never knew it." "And you've been doing this alone?" Harper asked, kneeling beside the stretcher. "Not alone. There are others like me, ghosts. We don't exist officially, but we're always there, in the shadows, in the places nobody wants to look, doing the things nobody wants to admit need doing." Admiral Whitmore's military law degree from the Elite Defense Academy had prepared him for courts-martial and treason trials, but nothing like this. The specialized military justice education programs, combining classified case studies with international warfare law, produced lawyers who could prosecute espionage cases involving national security. These exclusive legal training programs, accessible only to cleared personnel, cost hundreds of thousands, but guaranteed expertise in the most sensitive military tribunals. He would need every bit of that expertise to prosecute Thorne and unravel the network he was part of. As they loaded Madison onto the stretcher, Briggs asked one final question. "Will we see you again?" Madison smiled, the first genuine smile anyone had seen from her. "Captain, you've never seen me at all. Madison Graves doesn't exist, remember? In a few hours, there will be no record of her ever being here. The official report will state that Major Thorne was caught due to exceptional work by base security." "That's not right," Harper protested. "You deserve recognition. You saved lives today. Recognition gets people like me killed, Lieutenant. We work in darkness so others can live in light. It's not about glory or medals, it's about the mission. Always the mission." As they wheeled her toward the medical bay, she raised her hand in a casual wave. "Take care of each other. And Captain Calloway, that tactical error in Sector 7, fix it. Lives depend on it." The last thing anyone saw was the panther tattoo, visible through the torn shirt, seeming to prowl as her arm moved. Then the medical bay doors closed, and Madison Graves vanished into the mythology of the Pentagon. 6 hours later, when investigators arrived to document the scene, they found no record of anyone named Madison Graves entering the facility. Security footage showed a strange gap, as if someone had surgically removed specific segments. The authorization papers Admiral Whitmore had read had disappeared. The only proof she'd ever been there was the blood on the floor, the testimony of 30 witnesses, and the fact that 17 SEAL teams were alive because of her actions. Briggs stood in the empty war room, looking at the cracked tactical table where Thorne had fallen. Harper stood beside him, both of them processing what they'd witnessed. "Did that really happen?" Harper asked quietly. Briggs touched the table, his fingers finding the blood that hadn't been cleaned yet. "Yeah, it happened. We met a ghost." "A legend," Harper corrected. "No." Admiral Whitmore's voice came from behind them. He held a single item in his hand, a challenge coin, black with a golden panther on one side and the number 47 on the other. "We met a hero, the kind that doesn't get parades or medals. The kind that saves the world and disappears before anyone can say thank you. He placed the coin on the table in the exact spot where Madison had stood when she revealed the truth. She left this. I think she wanted us to remember that she was real, that sometimes the smallest person in the room is the deadliest. Outside the Pentagon, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled away from the loading dock. Inside, Madison Graves, or whoever she really was, sat in the back seat, a medic finishing the stitches on her wound. Her phone buzzed with an encrypted message. Phantom, new assignment, situation critical. How soon can you deploy? She looked at her bandaged ribs, at the blood on her clothes, at the exhaustion that went bone deep. Then she typed back, already gone. The SUV disappeared into Washington traffic, carrying its ghost back into the shadows, where legends lived and heroes died unknown. But in the war room of the Pentagon, 30 people would never forget the day they laughed at a small woman with blue hair, only to discover they'd been in the presence of death itself, wearing the disguise of the helpless. The next morning's briefing was subdued. Briggs stood where Madison had stood, Harper sat where she'd watched it all unfold, and Admiral Whitmore presided over a room forever changed. The cracked table had been replaced, the blood cleaned away, but the memory lingered like smoke. Before we begin, Whitmore said, I want to address what happened yesterday. Officially, Major Thorne Beckett was arrested for espionage following an internal investigation. That's all that happened. Understood? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, but everyone knew the truth. They'd witnessed something extraordinary, something that proved the stories whispered in barracks and bars might be true. That somewhere out there, guardian angels with guns and guitars watched over America's warriors. Briggs pulled up the tactical display, showing the corrected convoy route through Sector 7. The vulnerable positions Madison had identified were now marked as no-go zones, the supply line rerouted through safer terrain. We're implementing new security protocols, he announced, based on recommendations from internal review. No more Thursday afternoon access to Terminal 7. Biometric logs will be cross-referenced with quantum encryption matrices, and anyone exhibiting unusual interest in SEAL team deployments will be flagged immediately. Harper added, We're also implementing observer protocols. From now on, any unknown individual in secure areas should be treated with respect until their identity is verified. You never know who might be watching. It was as close as they could come to acknowledging what had happened without violating the secrecy that now bound them all. 3,000 miles away, in a nondescript apartment in San Diego, a woman with freshly dyed brown hair sat at a computer, monitoring intelligence feeds from around the world. The knife wound in her ribs pulled with each breath, but she ignored it. Pain was just information, and she had work to do. On her screen, 17 green dots showed SEAL teams in their new secure positions, all safe, all operational, all unaware that death had passed them by thanks to a ghost they'd never know existed. Her phone rang. No number, no identification. Phantom, she answered. Outstanding work in Washington. Thorne's network is unraveling. We've identified 6 more compromised assets. Send me the files. You need recovery time. That wound. Send me the files. A pause. Uploading now. Priority target is in Beirut. Iranian intelligence working to turn a Marine unit. Can you deploy in 72 hours? Madison looked at her reflection in the black computer screen. The blue hair was gone, the prosthetic pieces that had made her look younger removed. She looked like what she was, a weapon, honed to killing sharpness, wrapped in human skin. I'll be there in 48. She ended the call and began studying the files. Names, faces, locations, patterns. Another mission, another identity to build, another room full of people who would underestimate her until it was too late. But her mind drifted back to the war room, to Briggs's shocked face when he realized who she was, to Harper's compassion, to Whitmore's salute. For just a moment, she'd been seen, truly seen, for what she was. Not a monster, not just a weapon, but a protector, a guardian. Then she pushed the memory away and got back to work. Because somewhere out there, American soldiers were in danger. And as long as she drew breath, as long as she could still fight, she would be their phantom, their ghost, their guardian angel dressed in shadows and silence. In the weeks that followed the Pentagon incident, the ghost of Madison Graves haunted the corridors of power like smoke from a fire that refused to die. Officers who had been in that room found themselves jumping at shadows, looking twice at every unfamiliar face, wondering if another phantom walked among them. But the real Madison Graves was already 8,000 miles away, sitting in a Beirut safe house, brown hair now black, blue eyes hidden behind brown contacts, becoming someone else entirely. The war room had been repaired, the cracked table replaced, the blood scrubbed away until no physical trace remained of what had transpired. But memories, those stubborn ghosts of experience, refused to fade. Captain Briggs Calloway found himself standing in that same spot every morning, studying the corrected tactical displays, remembering how a woman he had dismissed as nothing had saved 17 SEAL teams with nothing more than a headset and encyclopedic knowledge of global operations. 3 months had passed since that day, and Briggs had been promoted, a bitter irony, elevated for his role in exposing the spy network. The official reports credited him with suspicious observations that led to Major Thorne Beckett's arrest. No mention of Madison Graves, no reference to Ghost Unit 7, no acknowledgement that the real hero had bled on their floor and disappeared like morning mist. Lieutenant Harper had been transferred to Naval Intelligence, her compassion and analytical skills recognized by someone, somewhere, who knew the truth. Before she left, she'd found Briggs in the war room one last time. "Do you think we'll ever see her again?" she'd asked. Briggs had touched the spot where the challenge coin had been left, now empty but somehow still significant. "We never saw her the first time, remember? She doesn't exist." But existence, as they would soon learn, was a flexible concept when it came to phantoms. The emergency began at 0300 hours Eastern Standard Time. Admiral Whitmore's secure phone erupted with alerts, dragging him from the deepest sleep into immediate alertness. By the time he reached the Pentagon, still in yesterday's uniform hastily thrown on, the Crisis Response Center was in full chaos mode. "Sir, we have a situation." Colonel Mitchell, Thorne's replacement as security chief, met him at the entrance. "Operation Neptune's shield has been compromised. Someone leaked the entire operational plan to hostile forces." Neptune's shield was the crown jewel of special operations, a coordinated strike involving 6 SEAL teams, Delta Force elements, and CIA assets, designed to eliminate a terrorist network that had been growing like cancer across 3 continents. 2 years of planning, millions of dollars in resources, hundreds of lives on the line. "How bad?" Whitmore demanded, striding into the command center, where screens showed real-time satellite feeds, communication intercepts, and tactical deployments. "Catastrophic. The enemy knows everything. Insertion points, extraction routes, safe house locations, even our communication frequencies. If we proceed, it's a massacre. If we abort, we lose our only chance at these targets for years." Whitmore studied the screens, his mind racing through possibilities. Who else knows about the compromise? "Just senior command. We've maintained radio silence with the teams. They're still in position, waiting for green light in..." Mitchell checked his watch. 4 hours and 17 minutes. "Get me a secure line to JSOC," Whitmore ordered. But even as he spoke, he knew conventional channels wouldn't save this operation. They needed something extraordinary, something that didn't officially exist. He pulled out a different phone, one he'd carried since the Madison Graves incident but never used. It had no numbers stored, no capacity to dial out. It could only receive calls, and only from one source. He pressed the single button on its surface and waited. 30 seconds passed. 60, 90, then it rang once. "Phantom protocol activated," Whitmore said into the silence. "Neptune's shield is compromised. Request immediate assistance." The response was a woman's voice, but not Madison's. Older, harder, with an accent he couldn't place. "Authentication required. Whitmore, Admiral, United States Navy. Authentication code, Black Panther 47. A pause. Stand by." The line went dead. Around him, the crisis center continued its controlled panic, officers desperately trying to find a solution to an impossible problem. 3 minutes passed, 5, 7. Then every screen in the room went black simultaneously. "What the..." Mitchell started, but the screens came back online, now showing a single figure in shadow, features obscured by digital distortion. "Admiral Whitmore," the figure spoke, and despite the voice modulation, something about the cadence was familiar. "You have 193 minutes until your teams are eliminated. I can save them, but the price is truth." "Madison," Whitmore breathed. "Madison Graves is dead," the figure replied. "She died in a car accident in Beirut 2 weeks ago. tragic loss. The funeral was yesterday. But as she spoke, the distortion flickered, and for just a moment, those Arctic blue eyes were visible. The same eyes that had stared down Major Thorne, that had coordinated 17 evacuations while bleeding out. "What do you need?" Whitmore asked. "Full operational command. No questions, no hesitation, no second guessing. Your teams follow my orders exactly or they die." Mitchell stepped forward, face flushed with indignation. "We can't just hand over operational command to someone who won't even show their face." He stopped mid-sentence as every classified file on his personal computer appeared on the main screen. Tax returns, medical records, that affair he'd hidden from his wife, the gambling debts he'd paid off using his mother-in-law's inheritance. "Colonel Mitchell," the figure said calmly, "you have bigger problems than my face. Sit down and be quiet, or your wife gets an interesting email in exactly 60 seconds. Mitchell sat. "Admiral, do we have an agreement?" Whitmore didn't hesitate. "Yes." "Good. First, cut all communication with teams 1 through 4. They're already compromised. The enemy has their frequencies and is feeding them false intel." "How could you possibly know?" "Because I'm looking at the enemy's command center through their own security cameras right now." The screen split, showing a room full of armed men studying the same tactical displays as the Pentagon. "Wave to the camera, Admiral. They're watching you too." The revelation that their supposed secure facility was compromised sent shockwaves through the room, but the figure, Madison, Phantom, whoever she was already moving forward. "Team 5, redirect to secondary insertion point Charlie 7. Team 6, abort entirely. There's an ambush waiting. CIA assets need to evacuate Safehouse Bravo immediately. It'll be hit in 43 minutes. Her fingers were visible now, flying across invisible keyboards, pulling up satellite feeds, communication intercepts, data streams that shouldn't exist. She was everywhere at once, orchestrating a battle from shadows, turning disaster into opportunity. "Colonel, I need you to leak false information on Channel 7. Tell them we're aborting the entire operation. But that would make them overconfident. They'll move their forces to block our retreat, exposing their positions. Admiral, have teams 1 and 3 execute flanking maneuver Delta. When the enemy moves to intercept our fake abort, they'll be exposed." It was brilliant, terrifying, and absolutely insane. But as Whitmore watched her work, he saw something that made his blood run cold. On one of the satellite feeds, a figure matching Madison's last known appearance was walking through a Beirut marketplace, very much alive despite being officially dead. "You're there," he said quietly. "You're in Beirut, in the middle of the operation." The figure on screen paused. "I'm nowhere, Admiral. I don't exist, remember?" But even as she spoke, the marketplace figure pulled out a phone, and the encrypted connection strengthened. She was coordinating a global operation while walking through enemy territory, probably with a price on her head and no backup. "Phantom, you can't," Whitmore started. "Watch me." The next 2 hours would go down in classified military history as the Phantom Reversal. Every trap became an ambush in reverse. Every leaked piece of intelligence became disinformation that led enemy forces into kill zones. Teams that should have died instead achieved total victory, eliminating a terrorist network that had plagued 3 continents for 5 years. The best part? The enemy never knew what hit them. Their own intercepted communications showed increasing confusion, panic, chaos as their perfect trap turned into a perfect massacre of their own forces. At 0600 hours, as the sun rose over the Pentagon, the final tally came in. 47 enemy combatants eliminated, 0 American casualties, 3 high-value targets captured alive, and enough intelligence gathered to dismantle 6 other networks. The figure on the screen had gone silent 20 minutes earlier, the connection severed without warning. But Whitmore knew she was alive. Somehow, he could feel it, like sensing a storm before it arrived. "Sir," Harper's voice came through secure comms. She'd been monitoring from naval intelligence. "I'm picking up chatter. Someone matching Phantom's description was seen entering the Iranian embassy in Beirut 30 minutes ago." "What?" Whitmore's blood went cold. "That's suicide. They know who she is." "No, sir. Different identity. She's going in as a Russian arms dealer. And, sir, the Iranians just lost their entire intelligence network in Lebanon. They don't know it yet, but their Beirut station chief is about to have a very bad day. Whitmore slumped in his chair, exhaustion and awe competing for dominance. How does she do it? Harper's response was quiet. Maybe that's the wrong question, sir. Maybe we should be asking why she does it. That answer would come 3 days later, in an encrypted file that appeared on Whitmore's personal computer. No sender, no digital trail, just a video file labeled Truth. He opened it alone in his office, door locked, blends drawn. Madison's face filled the screen, no longer hidden, no longer pretending. The blue hair was gone, replaced by natural auburn. The fake weakness had vanished, revealing someone who looked exactly like what she was, a weapon in human form. "Admiral," she began, "you asked for truth as payment. Here it is." She pulled up her left sleeve, revealing the full tattoo, not just the Panther in designation, but more. Dates, coordinates, names in small script winding around her arm like a prayer or a curse. Each name is someone I couldn't save. 47 successful missions, yes. But before that, one failure. Operation Blackwater, October 12, 2015. My team was compromised. 7 SEALs died because I missed a single detail. A guard who wasn't supposed to be there. A door that should have been locked, but wasn't. Her eyes had gone distant, seeing ghosts only she could perceive. I was the only survivor. Technically died twice on the evacuation helicopter. They brought me back, rebuilt me, trained me to be better. Ghost Unit 7 isn't just a designation, it's a promise. 7 lives lost, hundreds saved in return. That's the mathematics of redemption, Admiral. She looked directly at the camera, and Whitmore felt like she was looking through the screen into his soul. Every time someone underestimates me because I look weak, because I'm small, because I'm female, they're making the same mistake that guard in Blackwater made. He saw a woman and dismissed her as a threat. That dismissal cost him his life and saved mine. The video shifted to show surveillance footage from various operations. Madison in different disguises, different hair colors, different personas, but always the same lethal efficiency when the moment came. Briggs asked me in that war room if I'd ever be seen again. Tell him something for me. I see him every day. Not literally. I'm usually on the other side of the world. But I watch the operations he plans, the routes he designs, the lives he protects. That correction to Sector 7, it's saved 19 convoys so far. Whitmore felt his throat tighten. Even from shadows, she was watching over them. I'm sending this because you deserve to know the truth about Ghost Unit 7. We're not heroes, Admiral. We're ghosts, the dead who refuse to stop fighting. There are 12 of us now, scattered across the globe, each with our own numbers, our own failures to atone for, our own mathematics of redemption. She paused, reaching for something off-screen. When her hand returned, it held a set of dog tags. Not hers. The camera caught the name. Morrison, James T. These belong to one of the 7 who died in Blackwater. His widow thinks he died a hero, fighting overwhelming odds. She doesn't know he died because I failed to see a threat. But I carry his tags, and every life I save is partially his victory. That's how we ghosts work. We carry the dead with us, and their weight makes us stronger. The video began to fade, but her voice continued. Tell Harper she was right to show compassion. In this business, it's easier to become a monster than remain human. Her kindness reminded me that we're fighting for something worth preserving. The screen went black, then one final message appeared. P.S. The mole in your Tokyo office is Commander Stanton. You're welcome. Phantom Force 7. Whitmore immediately contacted Tokyo. Within 3 hours, Commander Stanton was in custody, and another intelligence leak was plugged. But the story of Madison Graves, of Phantom, of Ghost Unit 7 was far from over. 6 months later, Briggs stood in the war room, his war room now, having been promoted to oversee strategic planning. The morning briefing was routine, troop movements, supply chains, intelligence updates. No crises, no emergencies, no phantoms bleeding on his floor. Then Sergeant Hawkins, now his aide, entered with an unusual expression. Sir, there's someone here to see you. Says she has information about Operation Sandstone. Operation Sandstone was classified beyond top secret. Only 5 people in the building should even know that name. Send them in, Briggs ordered, his hand unconsciously moving to where he kept his sidearm. The woman who entered looked nothing like Madison Graves. Tall where Madison had been short, blonde where she'd been blue-haired, confident where she'd appeared weak, corporate attire instead of military surplus. Everything different except The eyes. Those Arctic blue eyes that had seen too much, carried too much, survived too much. "Captain Calloway," she said, her voice different but the cadence unmistakable. "We need to talk about Yemen." Briggs felt his heart skip. "Ma'am, I think you're mistaken. There's no 9 SEAL teams are walking into a trap in 72 hours. The intelligence you're basing Sandstone on is fabricated. I have proof." She set a tablet on the table, exactly where Madison had stood months ago. The screen showed satellite imagery, communication intercepts, financial transfers, evidence that the Yemen operation was compromised from the start. "Who are you?" Briggs asked, though he already knew the answer. "Today, I'm Sarah Mitchell, defense contractor, with concerns about equipment being diverted to hostile forces." She smiled, the same sharp smile he remembered. "Tomorrow, someone else. But right now, I'm the person saving your teams. Again." Harper appeared in the doorway, having been summoned by Hawkins. She took one look at the stranger and froze. "Hello, Lieutenant," the woman said. "I heard you made quite an impression at Naval Intelligence. Caught 3 moles in 4 months. Impressive." Harper's eyes widened in recognition. "I'm Sarah Mitchell," the woman interrupted firmly, "and I'm here about Yemen. Nothing more." The next hour was déjà vu twisted through a funhouse mirror. The same brilliant analysis, the same surgical precision in identifying threats, but delivered by someone who looked and sounded completely different. Only those eyes remained constant, blue windows into a soul that had seen hell and chosen to keep fighting anyway. When she finished presenting the evidence, Sandstone was scrapped, 9 teams were saved, and another disaster was averted. But as she prepared to leave, Briggs couldn't help himself. "The tattoo," he said quietly. "Do you still have it?" Sarah Mitchell paused at the door. Without turning, she rolled up her left sleeve. The panther was there, black as night, eyes burning gold. But something had been added. New coordinates, new dates, tiny script wound around the existing design. "Every mission," she said softly. "Every life saved. Every debt repaid. The mathematics of redemption, Captain." Then she was gone, Sarah Mitchell vanishing as completely as Madison Graves had, leaving only the evidence that would save lives and the memory of those eyes. Admiral Whitmore called an hour later. "Captain, did we just have a visitor?" "No, sir," Briggs replied, understanding the game. "Just a concerned citizen with information about equipment irregularities." "Good, because Madison Graves is dead, and we've never heard of Ghost Unit 7. "Understood, sir." But that night, Briggs found something on his desk, a challenge coin, identical to the one left months ago. On one side, the Panther. On the other, new coordinates and a date, tomorrow, 0300 hours. He knew he should report it, should follow protocol. Instead, at 0259, he stood at those coordinates, the roof of the Pentagon's East Wing, a restricted area he'd had to use his override codes to access. She was there, sitting on the edge of the building, legs dangling over a drop that would kill anyone without her training. Not Madison, not Sarah, but someone else entirely. Short black hair, Asian features that might have been prosthetic or might have been real, dressed like a janitor. "You came," she said without turning around. "You knew I would." "I hoped." She patted the spot next to her. "Sit." Briggs sat carefully, very aware of the 100-foot drop. "Why?" "Because you deserve to know the rest of the story, the part I couldn't put in the video." She pulled out a flask, took a sip, offered it to him. Whiskey, smooth and expensive. Operation Blackwater wasn't a failure because I missed a guard. It failed because someone on our side betrayed us. Someone I trusted. She paused, taking another sip. "Someone I loved." Briggs said nothing, sensing this was a confession that had never been made before. His name was Michael Torres, Navy SEAL, Team 6, my partner in every sense of the word. We were going to leave after that last deployment, start a life, have kids, be normal. She laughed bitterly. "But normal doesn't pay as well as treason." "He sold you out?" "Sold us all out. For $3 million and a new identity. The enemy knew exactly where we'd be, when we'd be there, how we'd react. 7 good men died because I was too blind to see what was right in front of me. That's not your fault." "Yes, it is." Her voice was sharp as glass. "I'm trained to see threats, to recognize patterns, to trust no one. But I trusted him, loved him, and that love killed 7 men. She stood abruptly, walked to the center of the roof. He's still alive, you know, living in Monaco under a new name, spending blood money on yachts and parties. I could kill him any time I want. I've had 37 opportunities in the last 3 years. Why don't you? She turned to face him, and in the moonlight, he could see tears on her face, the first genuine emotion he'd witnessed from her. Because killing him would be mercy. Living with what he's done, knowing I'm out here, knowing I could come for him any moment, that's justice. He hasn't slept well in 3 years. I know because I watch him. Every few months, I leave little reminders, a photo of the 7 who died, their names written in sand outside his villa, their voices on his voicemail. She pulled out a phone, showed him a video, a man in his 30s, handsome but haggard, jumping at shadows, checking locks obsessively, paying bodyguards who couldn't protect him from a ghost. The mathematics of redemption includes punishment, Captain. He took 7 lives, so I've taken his piece. Fair trade. Briggs absorbed this, understanding finally why she did what she did. Not just duty or patriotism, but personal atonement for a betrayal she couldn't have prevented. There's more, she continued. Ghost Unit 7 isn't just about special operations. We're hunting a network, a conspiracy that goes deeper than anyone realizes. Thorn was just a symptom. Yemen was just a test. Someone is systematically trying to destroy American special operations from within. Who? We call them the Board. 12 individuals, each controlling different aspects of the betrayal: military, intelligence, defense contractors, even Congress. They're not working for any foreign power. They're working for profit, selling American lives to the highest bidder. She showed him more files on her phone, connections, patterns, a web of corruption that made his stomach turn. We've identified 8 of the 12. 4 are already dead. Training accidents, heart attacks, suicides. The kind of deaths that don't raise questions. 4 more are under surveillance. But the last 4, the ones at the top, they're ghosts like us, hidden, protected, dangerous. What do you need from me? She smiled, the first genuine warmth he'd seen from her. Smart question, not why me or what can one person do, but what do you need? That's why I'm telling you this, Captain. She handed him a secure phone, military-grade encryption that would make NSA jealous. This connects to us, not just me, but all 12 ghosts. If you see something, suspect something, need something, use it, we'll be listening. Why trust me? Because you stood up for what was right, even when you thought I was nobody. Because you've saved hundreds of lives with your tactical planning. And because the Board has you marked for recruitment. They're going to approach you within the year, try to turn you like they turned Thorn. Briggs felt cold despite the warm night. How do you know? I've seen their files. You're perfect for them. Smart, ambitious, with a daughter starting college next year. They'll offer to pay her tuition, set her up for life, all for just a little information. Nothing that would hurt anyone, they'll say. I would never. I know, that's why I'm warning you. When they come, and they will come, you'll be ready. You'll know what they are, and you'll help us destroy them. She moved toward the roof access door, then paused. One more thing. Harper, keep an eye on her. She's good, maybe too good. The Board notices people like her. They'll either try to recruit her or eliminate her. I'll protect her. No, Madison turned back, her eyes hard. You'll watch her. There's a difference. Protection implies she's weak. She's not. She just doesn't know how strong she is yet. As she reached the door, Briggs called out one last question. Will I see you again? She laughed, the sound carrying across the roof like wind chimes. Captain, you see me every day. The janitor who cleans your office, the IT tech who fixes your computer, the delivery driver who brings your lunch. We're everywhere, watching, protecting, fighting battles you'll never know about. She opened the door, paused one final time. But if you ever need us, really need us, just say Phantom Protocol into that phone. We'll come, all of us if necessary. That's the promise of Ghost Unit 7. No one fights alone. The door closed, and Briggs was alone on the roof with a secure phone and the weight of knowledge that would change everything. Over the following months, he saw signs everywhere. A janitor with eyes too alert, a secretary whose typing was too precise, a security guard who moved like a dancer. Were they ghosts, or was he just paranoid? He never knew for certain, but he felt safer somehow, knowing that somewhere in the shadows, guardians watched. The Board's approach came exactly as predicted 11 months later. a consulting firm offering him a position, triple his military salary, all perfectly legal. The recruiter was smooth, professional, mentioning his daughter's Harvard acceptance and the crushing tuition costs. Briggs played along, gathering intelligence while feeding them false information through carefully orchestrated mistakes. Within 3 months, Ghost Unit 7 had enough evidence to dismantle the entire cell. The recruiter died in a car accident that wasn't. The consulting firm collapsed when its finances were mysteriously leaked. 4 more members of the board fell, dominoes toppling in perfect sequence. But the war was far from over. 2 years after the Pentagon incident, Harper, now a lieutenant commander herself, sat in her Naval Intelligence office reviewing satellite imagery when her secure line rang. "Harper," she answered. "Lieutenant Commander," the voice was electronically distorted, but somehow familiar. "You have a visitor coming. Don't react. Don't reach for your weapon." "She's a friend." The line went dead. 30 seconds later, a woman entered, elderly, walking with a cane, dressed like someone's grandmother visiting the Pentagon on a tour. But the eyes were Arctic blue, young in an old face, and Harper knew. "Hello," the elderly woman said, her voice creaky with false age. "I'm looking for the ladies' room." "Down the hall, second door on the right," Harper replied, playing along. The woman nodded, then dropped a folder on Harper's desk as she turned. "Oops, silly me. Must have dropped my tour materials." After she left, Harper opened the folder. Inside were photographs, documents, proof that someone in naval intelligence was feeding information to human traffickers, using military transportation to move victims. The evidence was devastating, implicating 3 admirals and a dozen other officers. But more importantly, it included rescue locations. 17 sites where victims were being held. Harper acted immediately, coordinating with FBI, local law enforcement, and military police. Within 6 hours, 347 victims were rescued, 53 traffickers arrested, and a network that had operated for years was destroyed. That night, she found a note in her apartment. Impossible, since her security was impeccable. "You asked once if you'd see me again. You see me every time you save someone. We're reflections of each other now, different faces of the same fight. Welcome to the shadows. M." With the note was a small box. Inside, a challenge coin. Not the Panther design, but something else. A phoenix rising from flames, with the number 01 beneath it. Harper understood. She wasn't Ghost Unit 7, but she was something new, something born from their example. The first of a different kind of warrior, fighting in light while they fought in darkness. The mathematics of redemption had found a new equation. 5 years passed. Briggs became General Calloway, overseeing special operations globally. Harper ran a task force that had no official name but unlimited resources. And somewhere in the world, 12 ghosts continued their work. Invisible guardians in an invisible war. Then came the morning when every secure phone in their network rang simultaneously. Briggs answered his immediately. No voice, just coordinates and a time, 48 hours. He arrived at the location, an abandoned warehouse in Baltimore, to find Harper already there, along with 9 others he didn't recognize but somehow knew were part of the network. Madison walked in last, no disguise this time, just herself. Older, scarred, but still those same blue eyes. She looked smaller than he remembered, or maybe he'd just forgotten how someone so small could cast such a large shadow. "The board is making their final play," she said without preamble. "They're going to stage a terrorist attack on American soil, blame it on Iran, start a war that will make them billions while killing thousands." She pulled up a holographic display. The technology was military, but beyond anything Briggs had seen. Plans, timelines, targets, all laid out in terrifying detail. "When?" Harper asked. 72 hours, during the State of the Union address. The room erupted in voices, but Madison raised her hand for silence. "We can't stop it, but it means Ghost Unit 7 comes into the light. We'll have to reveal ourselves, testify, provide evidence. It means the end of our operational effectiveness, possibly the end of our lives if the board's reach is deep enough." "What's the alternative?" someone asked. "We let them win. The attack happens, war starts, millions die, and the board gets everything they wanted. The choice was no choice at all." "What do you need?" Briggs asked, echoing his question from years ago. Madison smiled, that sharp, dangerous smile he remembered. "Everything, everyone. This is the endgame, General. We're going to destroy the board, save those lives, and disappear forever. But first, we need to die. The plan was insane, brilliant, and absolutely necessary. 12 ghosts would publicly die in various accidents over the next 24 hours, their deaths confirmed by officials who didn't know they were being manipulated. Meanwhile, their bodies would be replaced by sophisticated dummies, while the real ghosts went underground, deeper than ever before. Why die first? Harper asked. Because dead people can't testify, Madison explained. The board will think they're safe, lower their guard. Then, when we appear at the congressional hearing, very much alive with all our evidence, they'll have no time to react, no way to escape. She assigned roles with military precision. Briggs would coordinate from the Pentagon, using his authority to position resources. Harper would manage intelligence, ensuring their evidence reached the right people at the right time. The other ghosts would infiltrate, sabotage, and neutralize threats. "And you?" Briggs asked Madison. "I'm going after the head of the board personally." Her eyes went cold. It's time for that particular ghost to be exorcised. 48 hours later, the plan unfolded like a deadly ballet. 12 obituaries appeared in various newspapers: training accidents, sudden illnesses, random crimes. The board relaxed, thinking their greatest threat was eliminated. Then, as Congress convened for the State of the Union, as the board's attack was moments from launching, 12 supposedly dead operators walked into the Capitol building. The chaos was immediate and absolute. Security didn't know whether to arrest them or salute them. Madison walked straight to the podium, where the Speaker of the House stood frozen in shock. "Mr. Speaker," she said, her voice carrying through the silent chamber, "I need 5 minutes to prevent a war." What followed was the most devastating presentation in congressional history. Evidence of the board's existence, their crimes, their plans, all laid out with military precision. Bank records, recorded conversations, video surveillance, witness testimony from 12 ghosts who shouldn't exist. The attack was prevented with minutes to spare. 47 conspirators were arrested, including 2 senators, 3 generals, and a Supreme Court justice. The board, the shadow organization that had traded American lives for profit, was destroyed in a single afternoon. But when the dust settled, when the cameras turned away, when the politicians finished their grandstanding, the 12 ghosts had vanished again. Their testimony was on record, their evidence filed, but the people themselves were gone like smoke. Briggs found a note on his desk that evening. "The mission continues. New threats, new shadows, new ghosts. Thank you for standing in the light while we return to darkness. The mathematics of redemption are balanced for now." Phantom 047. Harper received a package, a new identity, complete documentation, and a choice: continue her official role or join them in the shadows. She chose to stay in the light, knowing that someone had to bridge the two worlds. The official record shows that Ghost Unit 7 was disbanded after the board's destruction. Its members retired or reassigned to classified positions. The truth, known only to a handful of people, is different. Somewhere in the world, 12 phantoms continue their work. Different faces, different names, but the same mission: protecting those who cannot protect themselves, fighting battles that will never make headlines, dying as many times as necessary to keep others alive. Madison Graves is still dead, officially. But Phantoms 47 lives on, her tattoo growing more complex with each mission, each life saved, adding to the mathematics of her redemption. The Panther still prowls, golden eyes burning in the darkness, watching, waiting, protecting. And in the war room of the Pentagon, General Briggs Calloway stands where a small woman once stood, bleeding but unbroken. He touches the spot where her blood fell, now marked by a small plaque that reads only, "For those who serve in shadows." Lieutenant Commander Harper visits that spot sometimes, remembering the day they laughed at a girl who looked weak, only to discover that strength comes in many forms, that sometimes the smallest person in the room is the deadliest, and that heroes don't always wear capes or uniforms. Sometimes they wear torn clothes and blue hair. Sometimes they bleed on your floor and disappear before you can say thank you. Sometimes they save the world and vanish, leaving only the memory of Arctic blue eyes and a promise that somewhere, someone is watching over you. The legend of Ghost Unit 7 lives on, whispered in barracks, shared in secret, a myth that might be true, a truth that must remain myth. And whenever American special operators go into harm's way, they know that somewhere in the shadows, a phantom watches, ready to emerge when all seems lost. The mathematics of redemption continue, balanced by blood, sacrifice, and the determination of those who refuse to let evil win, even if fighting it means becoming something that doesn't officially exist. Madison Graves died in that war room, in a sense. What emerged was something more and less than human, a living weapon, a guardian angel, a ghost story that saves lives. And in a world where threats evolve, where enemies hide in plain sight, where the line between friend and foe blurs like smoke, perhaps what we need most are ghosts, those who've already died and thus have nothing left to lose, everything to protect, and the skills to make both happen. The story ends where it began, in a room full of powerful people who thought they knew what strength looked like. They learned, painfully, that true strength often hides behind apparent weakness, that the most dangerous person in any room might be the one you dismiss without a second thought. Somewhere, Madison, or whatever name she uses now, is walking into another room, looking vulnerable, inviting dismissal. And somewhere, someone is making the last mistake of their life, underestimating her. The panther tattoo remains hidden under new clothes, the golden eyes waiting to burn bright when justice demands it. The mathematics of redemption never truly balance. There's always another life to save, another wrong to right, another shadow that needs a ghost. But for those who know, who remember, who carry secure phones that might ring with two words that change everything, Phantom Protocol, there's comfort in knowing that the shadows have guardians, that someone watches the watchers, and that sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys have monsters on their side too. General Calloway still briefs in that war room, still stands in that spot, still remembers the day everything changed. And sometimes, late at night when the building is empty and shadows dance in corners, he swears he can feel her presence. Not Madison Graves, she's dead, but Phantom, eternal, watching, protecting. The final truth, the one that no file will ever contain, no testimony will ever reveal, is this. Ghost Unit 7 isn't just 12 operators. It's an idea, a promise, a mathematics of redemption that spreads like ripples from a stone thrown in still water. Every life they save, every person who witnesses their work, carries a piece of that promise forward. Harper carries it in her relentless pursuit of justice. Briggs carries it in his strategic planning that prioritizes lives over politics. Hawkins carries it in his quiet observation of details others miss. Even Mitchell, humbled and reformed, carries it in his newfound integrity. They are all ghosts now, in their own way. Not the kind that don't exist, but the kind that haunt the conscience of those who would do evil, that appear when hope seems lost, that remind us that sometimes the smallest person in the room is exactly who you need when the world is falling apart. The war room stands ready for the next crisis, the next threat, the next moment when someone powerful dismisses someone who seems powerless. And when that moment comes, when arrogance meets competence disguised as weakness, the ghost of Madison Graves will be there. Not literally, she's dead, remember, but in the lesson she taught, written in blood on a Pentagon floor. Never judge by appearances, never dismiss the quiet ones, and never, ever laugh at someone just because they look like they don't belong. Because sometimes, the person you're laughing at is the only thing standing between you and catastrophe. Sometimes, they're a ghost, a phantom, a member of a unit that doesn't exist, fighting a war you'll never know about, saving your life while you mock them. The mathematics of redemption demand payment, but they also offer salvation. For every Madison Graves who dies, a phantom is born. For every betrayal, a loyalty deeper than blood emerges. For every shadow that threatens, a ghost stands ready to fight back. And in the end, when the last enemy falls, when the last innocent is saved, when the mathematics finally balance, perhaps the ghosts can rest. But not today. Not while threats remain. Not while the weak need protection from the strong, the innocent from the guilty, the light from the darkness. Somewhere, 12 phones wait to ring. Somewhere, 12 ghosts move through the world unseen. Somewhere, Madison Graves remains dead while Phantom's Force 7 lives on, adding names to her tattoo, balancing the mathematics one life at a time. The story ends, but the mission continues. In shadows, in silence, in the spaces between what we know and what we fear, Ghost Unit 7 endures. watching, waiting, ready, and if you're very lucky, you'll never need them. But if you do, if the moment comes when all seems lost, when the enemy is at the gates and help is impossibly far away, remember two words: Phantom Protocol. They'll come. They always do. Ghosts, after all, have nothing better to do than haunt the living. And sometimes, just sometimes, that haunting is the only thing that keeps us alive. The final image isn't of Madison, or Phantom, or any of the 12. It's of an empty war room at 3 a.m, shadows long and deep, a single spot on the floor that looks darker than the rest if you know where to look. And in that darkness, almost invisible unless you believe in ghosts, the outline of a panther, eyes golden, watching eternal. The mathematics of redemption never sleep, neither do the ghosts. The story should have ended there, in that empty war room with its guardian shadows. But 3 years later, on a rain-soaked night in Seattle, the mathematics of redemption demanded one final accounting. General Briggs Calloway stood in the emergency room of Harborview Medical Center, his uniform soaked with rain and something else, blood that wasn't his. His daughter Emma, now 24 and fresh out of medical school, worked the trauma unit. She'd called him an hour ago, voice shaking. "Dad, there's a patient here. She asked for you by name, said to tell you the phantoms are dancing." The code phrase he'd never expected to hear. One that meant a ghost was dying, really dying, not the elaborate fakes they'd orchestrated before. He found Emma standing outside Trauma Bay 3, her scrubs blood-stained, her face pale. "Dad, whoever she is, she's been shot 7 times. She should be dead, but she keeps refusing treatment until she talks to you." Briggs pushed through the curtain and froze. The woman on the gurney looked nothing like Madison Graves. Elderly, Hispanic features, gray hair, but those eyes, Arctic blue, even dilated with pain, even fading. "General," she whispered, her voice different but the cadence unmistakable. Needed to tell someone." "Don't talk," he said, moving to her side. "Let them treat you." "Too late," she coughed, blood speckling her lips. "The board wasn't finished. One more member, the 13th. We got them all." "No." Her hand found his, grip still surprisingly strong. "The one who started it all, who created the board. Who's been hiding behind 12 others for 20 years. She pulled him closer, whispered a name that made his blood freeze. The Vice President of the United States. "Evidence in Miami. Safe deposit box, Bank of America's, box 747. Another cough, weaker. "Other ghosts. Don't know I found it. Was going to handle it alone, but he had better shooters than expected." Madison Graves is dead," she said automatically, then laughed bitterly. "But I think Phantom's about to join her." Emma appeared with a crash cart. "Dad, she's crashing and you need to—" "No," Madison said firmly. "Let me finish this right. The mathematics." Her eyes found Emma, studied her with that penetrating gaze. "You're his daughter, the one with the neurological condition." Emma's eyes widened. "How did you—" "I know everything about the people I protect." Madison's voice was fading. "Your father saved 17 operations because I warned him? That's roughly 300 lives. Fair trade for one ghost." "Don't talk like that," Briggs said. "Emma, help her." But Madison's hand had gone to her left arm, fingers tracing something under the hospital gown. With effort, she pushed the fabric aside, revealing the tattoo, but it had changed. The panther was still there, but around it, hundreds of tiny names, dates, coordinates, covering every inch of skin from shoulder to wrist. "Each one," she whispered, "a life saved. The mathematics of redemption. Started with 7 deaths, ended with... Emma looked at the tattoo, her medical training letting her read what others might miss. "There are over 1,200 names here. 1,243, Madison corrected. Plus the 300 your father saved because I warned him. Plus whoever you save with what I'm about to tell you." She pulled Emma close with her other hand. "The vice president has a meeting tomorrow. Miami. He's going to authorize a bioweapon sale to terrorists. 20 million people will die if it happens. The evidence in that box will stop him, but someone has to get it. Someone he won't see coming." Emma looked at her father, then back at Madison. "Why are you telling me?" Madison smiled, the expression transforming her elderly features. "Because you have your father's courage and my instinct for patterns. I've been watching you for 3 years. Every patient you've saved, Every diagnosis you've caught that others missed. You see what others don't. You'd have made a good ghost. The monitors began alarming. Madison's grip loosened. "Wait," Briggs said desperately. "The other ghosts, how do we contact them?" "You don't. They're gone, scattered. The board's 13th member eliminated them one by one. I'm the last." She looked at Emma again. "Unless—" "I'm not a soldier," Emma protested. "Neither was I, once. Just someone who saw a wrong and couldn't walk away." Madison's eyes began to close. "The bank. Box 747. The combination is the date of Operation Blackwater. Save those people. Balance the mathematics." "Madison," Briggs said, but she raised her hand. "Let Phantom die with dignity, General. Let her finally rest." The monitors flatlined. Emma began CPR automatically, but Madison's hand caught her wrist with the last of her strength. "No, let me go, but promise. Promise you'll finish this." Emma looked at her father, then at the dying woman who'd saved so many. "I promise, Madison Graves, Phantom 047, the ghost who had haunted the world's shadows for years, smiled one last time. Then the Arctic blue eyes closed forever, and the last member of Ghost Unit 7 joined her fallen comrades. But the mathematics of redemption had one more equation to balance. 24 hours later, Emma Calloway walked into a Bank of America in Miami, her father's challenge coin in her pocket and Madison's promise in her heart. The safe deposit box contained everything: videos, documents, recordings that proved the vice president's treason beyond doubt. She could have taken it to the FBI, to the media, to Congress. Instead, she remembered Madison's words about seeing what others missed. The vice president was meeting with the bioweapon dealers in 3 hours. If he was arrested now, they'd scatter, go underground, try again later. But if someone were to walk into that meeting, someone he'd never suspect. Emma looked at herself in the bank's bathroom mirror, young, innocent-looking, her medical degree making her valuable to people dealing in bioweapons. She thought of Madison, small and overlooked until it was too late. The mathematics of redemption demanded balance. Madison had saved 1,243 lives. The bioweapon would kill 20 million. Emma made her choice. 3 hours later, she walked into a warehouse in Miami's industrial district, wearing a wire the FBI didn't know about, carrying evidence they didn't know existed, about to stop a deal that would have ended the world as we knew it. The vice president looked right through her, seeing only a young doctor interested in money, just as people had looked through Madison, seeing only weakness. The last ghost of Unit 7 had passed the torch, and in that moment, as Emma smiled sweetly while federal agents surrounded the building, as the 13th member of the board realized he'd been played by someone he'd dismissed, the mathematics finally balanced. Madison Graves was dead. Phantom was gone. But the mission would never die. In Seattle, General Briggs Calloway stood in an empty trauma bay, looking at the spot where the last ghost had finally found peace. On the floor, barely visible, was a single drop of blood that the cleaning crew had missed. He thought of Madison's words, of the mathematics she'd lived and died by. 7 deaths in Blackwater had created a ghost who saved 1,243 lives. Those savings had inspired his daughter to save 20 million more. The mathematics of redemption, it seemed, paid compound interest.